So this tutorial is aimed at explaining the very basics of this game to those who are considering buying it, and to those who have just purchased it and don't really have an idea what they're doing. Hopefully you just came here from my previous video where I tried to convince you to buy Arma 3, but if not, that's fine too. Arma is one of those games with endless detail. Once you think you've learned it all, another thing pops up that you never knew. Whilst there are many existing tutorials on the basics of Arma, they are really primarily aimed at the more experienced people who have a feel for the base mechanics of the game. So I'm going to address the very basics. I'm going to get you from the store page into a server with the best, and I mean the best setup possible. Arma is not an easy game to learn. Arma is not like other games in the sense that you can just purchase, download and install the game and click play. You're not going to have the best experience if you do that. There are some essential steps that you're going to have to take to get the most out of this game. Fortunately, I'm going to cover these. I'm going to cover launching the game, the basic controls and settings, downloading and using mods, and joining the right server. Launching the game. Launching the game can be done in multiple ways. There are two primary ways to play Arma: modded and vanilla. Most of the time, if you're looking for a vanilla experience or you're looking to use some of the more common mods, then you'll be using the Arma 3 launcher. So let's start off by looking at the Arma 3 launcher, getting the basics and getting it set up for you to use. First, go to your Steam, launch up Arma 3, and once it's loaded up, there's several things we've got to do before we launch the game. So first, go to your parameters, check no splash or skip logos at startup, skip intro or show static background in menu, and then navigate to your advanced and check no logs. The next and final step here is to go to options, launcher options, and make sure that the action after game start is to close the launcher after clicking play. This is very important to the performance of your game, even to those with a NASA PC, and before we launch the game, let's just go to the mod tab and ensure that we have no mods selected. If there are, you can simply deselect them all, or alternatively, if you want to save these for later, this selection for later, you can go down to the bottom left and click the arrow and launch without mods. Now, let's play. Basic controls and settings. Once you have launched the game, it is important to get your settings right. To get a somewhat realistic feel to what we'll experience, we're going to go to the single player tab, showcases, and just launch the infantry showcase. Click continue, space, space. Once you're in, escape to your options and go to your video. Ensure that sampling is 100%. Higher will reduce your frames for very little reward. Lower will make your game look absolutely terrible, so I really recommend 100%. So set your textures to ultra, your objects to medium, terrain to standard, your shadow to ultra or disabled, and make sure it's nothing in between. Set your particles to high, your cloud to ultra or disabled, your PIP to ultra or disabled, HDR to standard, dynamic lights to ultra, and if you have shadows on, set them to 100 meters, or if you can, 200 meters, but this might slow your graphics card down a bit. If your FPS is low, then you can first lower your object detail, followed by your terrain and disabling your shadows. If you still have low FPS, you can lower your HDR or your object in view distance and see if you get any result. Next, go to display. Make sure that VSync is disabled. Brightness and gamma don't really affect FPS, so set these to whatever you like. Some players set them up higher when it's nighttime and they don't have night vision. Now go to your anti-aliasing and post-processing tab. These post-process effects do whatever you want to them, they don't really affect your FPS. I recommend removing all forms of blur entirely. When you get low FPS, which is quite common with Arma, the blur really looks bad. A slight sharpen filter though, with some depth of field, can add a nice look. Set AO to HBAO plus high, and if your FPS is low, set this to something lower or disable it. Have your caustics enabled, and if you have a lower end GPU, avoid the full screen anti-aliasing and set your anisotropic filtering to ultra. And if you do have anti-aliasing, set it to 2 or 4 times. Set your ATOC to disabled. If you want to have really fluffy trees, and if you want it to be harder to see people, then sure, you can enable it, but personally I turn this off, unless I'm doing some sort of cinematic stuff. Set your post-process anti-aliasing to FXAA Ultra, and your anisotropic filtering to Ultra. If your game is struggling for FPS, try to disable your AO. Now I'm not going to get into the controls other than for one thing. Now this is going a bit out of the realm of the video, so I'm going to point you first to a fantastic tutorial by Dyslexy, and you can check him out on the basic combat mechanics and controls of the game. However, that's after you finish watching this video, of course. Now my little tip here is that for those of you who have played Arma 2, you can go to your control presets and use the old Arma 2 control scheme, of course with a few changes to allow for the added features. Mods and servers. Now that we have covered the very basics of launching the game and have set up your Arma, you will really want to play the game. As I said before, there are 2 primary ways of playing Arma, modded and vanilla. If you want to play vanilla, as we discussed, the best thing to do is launch the game without mods via the Arma 3 launcher, and then use your server browser either via the launcher or in-game to find the server that you want to play. And if you're using the launcher browser, then you can try and join the server and it will tell you if you're missing any mods. And if you're using the in-game server browser, click the server once and look at the bottom right and you can see a list of mods on the server. And with some servers it might even give you the option to download them. Now mods are a huge part of Arma, so there is no doubt that there will be servers that you want to join that have mods but you can't seem to get into. This can often be because the mods are not on Steam, or they're locked behind a launcher. For example, CCG requires you to use this launcher to download and play on Frankie on PC's Exile mod. A common launcher that people use is the Arma 3 launcher. This has most of the common mods that you'll need. With most of these launchers, it is up to you to go on the website, download and sort it out. However, just make sure that with all launchers that you choose to use the correct game and mod directory. This will be arma3.exe in your main Arma 3 directory and your main Arma 3 directory. Many of these servers will also have community websites where there is plenty of support available. I hope this has helped you getting started out on Arma, and perhaps even shown some other more experienced players, if you happen to be watching this, some new tricks that you didn't already know about. As always, have a great day. Please drop a like and a subscribe because seriously, it helps me a lot.